It was my boss, Henry, the section manager, who came to the place where I worked part-time.
What are you doing here? Caught moonlighting by Henry, I was fired for violating company policies.
When I told my girlfriend, Alicia, she was furious. A loser like you has no value to me anymore. Alicia shouted that and walked out. After losing everything, all I had left was that part-time job.
I considered myself a mass of inferiority complexes.
While my name, David, was ordinary, everything else about me was below average. I didn't have a good style, facial features, or even athletic skills. In particular, my poor appearance was the most common cause of inferiority complexes.
As a child, I only remembered suffering because of how I looked.
As a result, I had no relationships with girls in middle school or high school. However, it was good to be uninvolved with girls early on.
I could focus on my studies.
Even when popular guys were hanging out and talking with girls, I worked hard on my studies alone.
As a result, although I had a loveless student life, I was highly successful academically.
I got straight into a top-ranked university and got a job at a well-known food manufacturer listed on the NYSE. To those around me, my life was running smoothly on an elite course.
Of course, it'd be a lie to say I wasn't lonely.
Amidst a hint of loneliness, I was working when something unexpected happened at a client visit.
A completely unexpected person showed up.
Thank you for...
Wait, David. Jason. Long time no see.
It was Jason, a high school friend. Jason was a good-looking guy and one of the most popular students group in high school. Oddly, despite his popularity, he used to talk to me a lot and even invited me to hang out with girls.
But I always said no.
Because the girls behind him didn't look pleased. And the other popular guys clearly looked down on me. So, I couldn't join Jason's group.
I'm really surprised I'm going to be working with you.
Ah, yeah. Hey David, do you have a girlfriend now?
No.
I look like this, so I'm still.
Good. Then why don't you come to the mixer tonight? We're short on people.
But...
I'm not sure if I can. What are you talking about?
You're a salesperson for a prestigious company, right?
You'll be fine.
Jason pushed a bit forcefully.
I ended up agreeing to go to a mixer that evening.
After work, I met up with Jason and we headed to the venue. We entered a lively bar, which was out of my league, and several men and women were already waiting for us. According to Jason, the men were his colleagues, and the women were employees from a client company.
Moreover, all the women were stunning.
As we sat down, all female eyes were instantly on Jason. Even as the mixer started, all the women's eyes were on Jason. While Jason was the center of attention, his colleagues and I were completely out of the game. Amidst this, for some reason, only Alicia, who everyone would consider a beautiful woman, was a little different.
Hey, what do you do on your days off?
Well, Not used to talking with women, I became flustered and couldn't answer smoothly. But Alicia patiently waited for my answer with a smile.
Maybe she's interested in me.
I knew it was probably just wishful thinking, but I couldn't help feeling that way. Just then, one of Jason's colleagues cut in, saying to Alicia, "Hey, why waste time talking to this ugly guy when you can talk to me?"
What?
I don't judge people by their looks, and I hate anyone who mocks others.
Alicia slammed the table hard.
As all eyes in the bar turned to us, Jason's colleague fell silent, perhaps embarrassed. After that, Alicia continued to engage with me actively. Seeing this, Jason said, "David is a good guy, just not used to women, so don't rush him and just enjoy talking." Thanks to that, I managed to exchange contact information with Alicia as we left.
The day after the mixer, I immediately messaged Alicia. I asked her if she wanted to have dinner, just the two of us.
I was prepared for her rejection, but she replied with a yes. Alicia looked even more beautiful when we went out together.
But she never boasted about it. I liked that about her very much.
After a few times of seeing each other like that, I wanted to go out with Alicia. Since she agreed to meet me, she must not dislike me. With that thought, I took the plunge and confessed my feelings. She said yes. Thus, Alicia, a true beauty, became my first girlfriend. 6 months into dating Alicia, I started living with her considering marriage. Normally, I would have been overjoyed, but I was filled with anxiety. Living together, I discovered something worrisome. Alicia was a big spender. Alicia didn't save for their future marriage, instead, she spent her entire salary on herself. She splurged on designer goods, spa treatments, and dining out. Alicia continued living this extravagant lifestyle. Eventually, her salary wasn't enough, and she started using the living expenses I provided for her personal use. Reluctantly, I began dipping into my savings to cover our expenses, but Alicia didn't stop her extravagant spending. Soon, my credit cards were maxed out, and I no longer had any spare money at my disposal. I was even borrowing money from colleagues for lunch because Alicia had spent it all. Driven to desperation, I resorted to taking up a side job, which was prohibited at my company. It's not really part-time work. I'm just helping out at a friend's restaurant in exchange for meals. With that excuse, I went to the restaurant where I had worked during my student days. Working part-time now? Well, there's been a lot going on. If you could just give me some meal. Pete, the manager, looked puzzled but didn't ask any more questions. So, I started helping out at the restaurant. Initially, I just helped out at the restaurant and received meals in return. I believed this wouldn't count as violating the prohibition against side jobs. That was what I thought. However, eventually, just getting meals wasn't enough to sustain my living. Alicia's spending habits intensified, and I found myself desperately needing money. Thus, I reluctantly decided to start receiving a salary. That definitely made it a part-time job. Pete must have sensed something was off, but he never openly addressed it. Then one day, as usual after work, I was at the restaurant when Henry casually walked in. Henry? What are you doing here? What are you doing in a place like this? Henry had been visiting a friend's house nearby. He ended up at the restaurant on a recommendation. You could say it was just bad luck, but I felt like it was bound to happen sooner or later. The next day, I was called into HR and questioned about the situation. Since I was getting paid, there was no excuse I could make. There was some debate over my punishment, but ultimately, I was fired for violating the company's employment regulations. Being a food manufacturer, the company was concerned about potential information leaks. Certainly, depending on one's perspective, it was not hard to believe that the know-how of a food manufacturer could be utilized in a restaurant. I had no intention of doing so, but I didn't have the energy to argue. When I told Alicia I had been fired, she flew into a rage. Fired? Yes. Are you serious? It's true. Sigh. I'm so disappointed. Why do you think I was dating someone as unattractive as you? Because you were an elite working at a publicly traded company. Not an elite. Ugly. Incompetent. Broke. Just a whole lot of nothing. What am I supposed to do about this month's credit card payment? Well, typical. You're worthless now that you have nothing. Alicia threw the remote control at me. At that moment, something inside me snapped. This is ridiculous. It's because of Alicia's extravagance. Not only did you spend your own money, but you also blew through mine and the household money. That was why I had to get the second job. What? Blaming me? Unbelievable. Isn't it true? Oh, fine. If that's how it is, I'm done. You're pathetic without any prospects. How dare you say that? Ha? No wonder. Do you think women go out with or marry men without thinking? That's why I don't like losers like you who have never been in a relationship before. Oh my. Yes, women live by calculation. Looks, social status, money, sexual chemistry, we just choose the man who offers the most. So, you were only interested in my title. Well, yeah. So now you're useless to me. Even if you begged like before, it's a no-go now. I thought there was hope since you never mentioned my looks, but guess what? Maybe that's fair enough for both of us. I bragged about Alicia's good looks to everyone around me, too. You're disgusting. That's mutual too. So, you don't need to apologize to me. Anyway, I'm no longer interested in anything beyond your looks. Just leave. I bet you've got someone else anyway. What if I do?
Fine, then consider this month's credit card payment as severance. Just go. I don't want to see you anymore. I'm the same as you. Don't you ever show up in front of me again."
Eventually, Alicia packed her things and left. I thought I wouldn't regret it, nor feel sad. But as soon as she was out of sight, tears started flowing. My first breakup made me realize I was just being vain.
Holding onto my wounded heart, I broke down and cried. All I was left with was debt. No savings, no job. Still, I had to figure out how to pay rent and living expenses. In my predicament, I visited the restaurant again.
When I told Pete about my situation, he said, "You can work here again."
Since I had nowhere else to go, I decided to work in the restaurant.
After a while, Pete mentioned something unexpected to me.
"Do you want to become a full-time employee?" "What? You worked for a food manufacturer, right?" "I've talked to the headquarters about leveraging that knowledge here."
Pete, who had watched me work since my student days, wanted to help me out since I was struggling after being fired. So he told the head office that I worked for a food manufacturer and asked if they could hire me as a full-time employee.
I immediately agreed. Thanks to Pete's arrangements, I passed the interview at the headquarters and became a full-time employee. I couldn't thank Pete enough.
I felt I had to repay him through my work.
From the day I became a full-time employee, I threw myself into my job. I focused especially on cleaning and preparing the staff meals.
It went without saying that since it was a restaurant, it was important that the inside of the restaurant be kept clean.
Surprisingly, staff meals were also very important. In fact, staff meals were not just meals for the staff.
It was meant to be a training ground for the staff as well as a prototype for new menu items. Staff meals prepared by staff with a certain skill level were delicious and often became the restaurant's newest menu item.
While a consistent menu provided a sense of security, it could become stale without new offerings.
For a restaurant competing with many others, losing freshness could lead to a business crisis.
Thus, developing new menu items was crucial.
That was why I put so much effort into the staff meals. Moreover, having been trained in food preparation during my newbie training at the food manufacturer, preparing these meals was second nature to me. I developed one impressive menu item after another.
This is a marinade-style dish.
I used leftover sashimi and scraps, flavored with olive oil and orange.
I see, it's a step beyond whitefish carpaccio.
This is also delicious. All of these were well received. Pete and my colleagues praised my staff meals, and some of the most popular dishes even made it to the restaurant's menu as new products.
Moreover, the menus I developed were highly rated by customers.
They became popular items, and each new menu attracted new customers. The spread on social media was incredible, and eventually, I was approached by the headquarters.
"About the menu you developed, could we use it in other locations?"
"Yes, of course." Thus, my menus were adopted across the chain nationwide. Furthermore, my menus also boosted sales at each location. Thanks to this, I started visiting the headquarters more often and was eventually promoted to cooking advisor.
However, being a cooking advisor wasn't all positive.
While I had more opportunities to teach the correct preparation methods of my menus, it meant less time on the ground.
I felt like I wasn't able to repay Pete.
But I barely had time to worry. I was busy with workshops hosted by the headquarters and shooting menus for social media.
The media attention increased, and my days were a whirlwind.
Amidst this hectic routine, my life began to change subtly. I was discreetly approached by competitors on social media. There was no end to the number of people trying to headhunt me with offers of high compensation. Of course, I had no intention of accepting these offers. My main goal was to repay Pete. But as things stood, repaying him seemed far from possible.
After much deliberation, I chose to go independent. Becoming independent would give me more flexibility with my time.
When I informed the headquarters about my decision to start my own business as a food coordinator, they tried to retain me.
However, when they realized I was determined,
they agreed to let me resign on the condition that I continue to work with them as an external food coordinator.
After resigning, I immediately went to Pete. "Pete, I'm going independent as a food coordinator and..."
"That's great news.
But I still owe you one."
"What are you talking about? You've already repaid me enough." Really? Thanks to you, this place's revenue has doubled. You've been recognized by the headquarters too, nothing could be better. Go do your best on your own path. Thank you. However, I'll still be working with the headquarters, so we'll probably see each other again. That's right. I'm looking forward to it. Pete said this with a smile and sent me off. Now, with no regrets left, I left the restaurant with confidence. Though I had some uncertainties about going independent, those fears proved unfounded. Once it became known that I had gone independent, major companies boldly approached my office. I was so busy meeting with these large companies that it would take up my entire day. Soon, I needed more hands, so I reached out to my contacts from my days at the food manufacturer to hire assistants. It's probably to be expected from a former NYSE-listed food company employee. I easily found people with enough skills just to assist in food coordination. Initially, I hired only a few assistants, but they were so competent that work kept pouring in. While I generously taught them everything I knew, it seemed that my assistants contributed even more. The office grew rapidly, and so did the amount of work. Eventually, my office became one of the leading food coordination firms in the States, and by the 10th year, we had expanded to 5 locations nationwide. However, by that time, I had shifted to a more behind-the-scenes role. Even without me being at the forefront, the staff who were once my assistants had become top-notch food coordinators themselves. Thanks to my overly competent staff, I was practically retired. I still did some remote work, but it wasn't enough to call it overworking. I was only involved in important contracts and meetings, showing my face at the office occasionally. Because I was rarely at the office, I had plenty of free time. Thus, I found myself visiting Pete's restaurant almost every day. Pete, can I get another one, please? I was calling out to Pete when the entrance opened. I locked eyes with a customer who walked in. Is that you, David? It's been a while. Alicia. The customer who was coming in was Alicia. Next to her was a good-looking man who looked younger than Alicia. What, your boyfriend? Don't be stupid, huh? How can I be unmarried at my age? It's got to be the husband. Well, you're right. Oh, I see. You didn't get it because you're not married. You still work part-time in a restaurant like this. And a loser in life like you wouldn't understand such a thing. Alicia taunted me. And she sneered unpleasantly. The old me would have been disheartened here. But now, I was different. I was confident and unbothered. So, I retorted without flinching. Sorry for being at this kind of place. But you coming here means you can only afford this level of food and drink, right? Must be hard when your husband doesn't earn much? Tough for someone who loves money. What? Don't be rude. His monthly income is over $10,000. Don't put us with you. Oh, okay. I thought it must be that much since you're dining at a chain-operated restaurant. Absolutely not. Occasionally enjoying cheap alcohol and meals like this helps us not to get tired of high-class restaurants. Understand? Well, it's not something I should be explaining to you, loser. I see. My apologies for being loser. Well, I might work fewer hours than your husband. Some days I don't work at all. And I spend more time here. That's funny. You were a real loser, weren't you? Just in terms of working hours. My income easily surpasses 10 times what your husband makes. You know, my hourly income might just compete with your husband's monthly income. Yeah, that's funny. Hearing this, Alicia's complexion changed. And she slammed the table while shouting loudly. Are you crazy? How can you earn so much money working in a restaurant? Don't lie to me. Excuse me, please don't bang the table. Pete, who had been listening quietly, intervened. Then he continued in a restrained, low tone. He's not working part-time for us. He worked as a cooking advisor at the head office and then went independent about 10 years ago. He's a great food coordinator now. He has several offices all over the States, and he's also been pulled for filming for movies and TV dramas. Oh yes, wasn't the food scene in last year's blockbuster movie supervised by his firm? Pete, please stop it. That was all in the past. The movie supervision was done by my staff, I just observed. I chuckled as Alicia was visibly stunned. Here's your appetizer. Pete handed a small dish to the staff. I took it from the staff and placed it in front of Alicia. I don't think people are worth what they look like. I agree. Well, you can't eat the fish you let go, no matter how big or small it is. But you can enjoy the excellent fish dishes I supervised here as much as you want. Bye. With that, I left the restaurant laughing. A few days later, when I visited the restaurant again, Pete told me about what happened after I left. Alicia, having eaten the appetizer I sent out, reportedly said, "It's infuriating, but it's delicious." Apparently, out of frustration, she even shed some tears. And she drank a lot of alcohol, perhaps drowning her sorrows. It eventually led to a fight with her husband. Finally, she berated her husband, "You're just handsome and useless. Marrying you was a mistake. I want a divorce." She used to say she hated people who looked down on others. She hasn't changed at all. People who live calculatingly are just like that. Pete said thoughtfully. I don't know if she actually divorced, but knowing Alicia, it probably happened. But why did I ever date such a woman? Maybe it's because I'm happy now that I ponder this.